Welcome to literary and jury charge practice. We'll get started now with this jury charge. And let's see, we have maybe a few words in here that we might want to practice a little bit. We have district attorney, eyewitnesses, indictment, so eyewitnesses, indictment, let's see, hit and run. This is about an accident resulted from a hit and run driver. All right, we'll give this one a try. Here we go. Ready? Everyone in the district attorney's office was awaiting the results of the grand jury's probe. Everyone wanted to know whether there would be an indictment of the drug dealer. The problem was that there was no eyewitness to the accident. The accident resulted from a hit and run driver who fled the scene. The driver who fled the scene was later identified as the defendant. The question arose as to whether the crime was that of leaving the scene of an accident or of murder. The witness's account with regard to the events that took place between the attorney and his client was questioned because of the privilege that exists between the attorney and his client. This privilege is known as privileged communication. A client may speak openly before his attorney without fear of it being used against him. The discussion between the attorney and his client was privileged. According to the defense attorney, however, there are certain exceptions. Under certain rules, a lawyer is required to reveal information to prevent the commission of a crime that the lawyer reasonably believes is likely to result in someone's death. In this case, the lawyer had the duty to tell what he knew, believing that the eyewitness will likely be harmed, the attorney is required to inform the person of the threat. In other cases, he must take steps to prevent harm from coming to that person. The grand jury brought forth an indictment believing that a crime has been committed. The indictment was the actual charge of murder. When people are indicted, they are charged with the crime. Let me give you some of those words again. We had indictment, district attorney, grand jury, eyewitness, privilege, so I would maybe spend a little time also just on those words. I hope that helps. All right, let's get back to our cheese people, our cheese characters in the book. Who moved my cheese? All right, where are we? So the last thing I believe we had written on the wall was, what would you do if you weren't afraid? So let's see what happens next. Here we go. As he tried to find his way, Ha worried at first that he might have waited too long in cheese station C. He hadn't had any cheese for so long that he was now weak. It took him longer, and it was more painful than usual to get through the maze. He decided that if he ever got the chance again, he would adapt to change sooner. It would make things easier. Then Ha smiled, a weak smile, as he thought, better late than never. During the next several days, Ha found a little cheese here and there, but nothing that lasted very long. He had hoped to find enough cheese to take some back to him and encourage him to come out into the maze. But Ha didn't feel confident enough yet. He had to admit he found it confusing in the maze, things seemed to have changed since the last time he was out here. Just when he thought he was getting ahead, he would get lost in the rows. It seemed his progress was 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It was a challenge, but he had to admit that being back in the maze, hunting for cheese, wasn't nearly as bad as he feared it might be. All right, back to jury charge practice. We'll finish this jury charge that we started. We have indictment, grand jury, assistant district attorney, acquittal, we have an alibi witness. All right, here we go. The grand jury differs from the trial jury in that it makes its determinations before the actual trial takes place. The grand jury decides the charge in the case. A charge does not mean that the defendant will be convicted. A person may be charged with a crime, but an acquittal may follow at trial. After the grand jury met and brought forth the indictment, the case was set to go to trial. At the actual trial, the jury has to determine whether the charges brought forth by the grand jury should stand and what the punishment for the crime should be. The trial jury, when it met, had to make a decision as to the guilt or innocence of the defendant who had been charged with the murder of the assistant district attorney. If the jurors did not find enough evidence, then an acquittal was the result. the grand jury rather than the district attorney's office brought forth the charges. An information is the charge that is made by the district attorney's office when there is enough evidence to convince the district attorney that a crime has been committed. If there is not enough evidence at that time, or if the district attorney's office wishes it to be sent to the grand jury, then that is the case. In this case, the defense attorney was able to produce an alibi witness. An alibi witness is a witness who is able to place the defendant at a different place during the time that the crime was committed. In this case, the alibi witness was questionable. An alibi witness is a good vehicle in proving the innocence of a party. The attorney for the defendant produced an alibi witness who would place the defendant in another town when the murder was supposed to be happening. Let's read a little bit more from our adventure. Ready? As time went on, he began to wonder if it was realistic for him to expect to find new cheese. He wondered if he had bitten off more than he could chew. Then he laughed, realizing that he had nothing to chew on at the moment. Whenever he started to get discouraged, he reminded himself that what he was doing, as uncomfortable as it was at the moment, was in reality much better than staying in the cheeseless situation. He was taking control rather than simply letting things happen to him. Then he reminded himself, if Sniff and Scurry could move on, so could he. I haven't had much mention of Sniff and Scurry for a while. We'll have to see what happens. All right. That will conclude our literary and jury charge practice. Thank you.